You are listening to Mollie on a Trip, music around Paris on Paris Underground Radio.
Salut! You have reached Mollie on a Trip, music around Paris. My name is Mollie, and I'm a former music executive, and I moved to Paris in 2022 for an adult gap year, kind of a post-COVID YOLO vibe. In the podcast, I'll be talking to musicians, songwriters, producers, and executives, both traveling and natives, about what they like to do here. I was interested in where they like to play shows, where they hang out, what kind of art they like to check out, where their favorite neighborhoods are, and my personal favorite is finding out where they like to eat and drink. Hope you enjoy. Today, we're going to be talking to the artist Flavia. She is somewhat based in LA, but a very nomadic girl. Wonderful pop artist, very kind, very interesting, and she's a wonderful human who loves Paris. So it was wonderful to talk to her. She had some really, really beautiful insights about the city to share with us. So if you would like to check her out, flavia.la is her website, and from there you can link to all the different music channels. Hello, Flavia, and everybody, welcome to Mollie on a Trip, music around Paris. And today we are talking to the artist Flavia. Hello, how are you?
Hello, thank you for having me to talk about all things Paris, which there's really nothing better to be talking about this morning.
I agree. I actually wanted to start with just like a little bit about you and your music, and for listeners that aren't familiar with you, or anyone, what do you want to tell them about yourself?
Yeah, I am an indie independent pop artist and songwriter, performer, currently living nomadically for the last few years, but previously before that in Los Angeles for 10 years and having grown up in Europe before that. So kind of a little bit of a child of the world. But yeah, music and art, music and acting and art are very much my passions and part of my soul journey at this time.
Did you grow up listening to music a lot as a kid? Was it in your household? Was it something that your parents, taught you, or how did you get into it?
My mom is Italian, and her father, my grandfather, would play a lot of like classic Italian arias.
Cool.
And so it was around, but in a very different way. There weren't any musicians in my family, and it was something my mom said since my first formation of words. It was like, I'm going to be a singer. Like how a 2-year-old even knows, what that means. And most kids kind of change their minds along the way 1,000 times. And mine was just like fortified. It was always this. So it very much, as cheesy as it may sound, felt like it's just what I came out of the womb. Like, this is what I'm doing. So,
Right. That's beautiful.
Which is good, because you need to be resilient for this industry.
So certainly true. I mean, I know it's hard to like choose a child, but if there was a song from your entire catalog that you kind of feel really special and it like really represents you, is it your newest thing? Is it something you wrote, back in the day? Like, what's something that people could go to and you should be like, the first song you should listen to of mine to like welcome people into your music? What would it be?
Yeah, I think what's amazing about music is that it kind of represents life for me. It's always changing. Like everything I'm singing about or writing about, or the style in which, I'm shaping my productions, really changes with my life cycle and my mood and where I'm living and what I'm listening to. And so I think why it's so hard for artists to pick favorites is because it's just represents different, I don't want to speak for everyone, but for me, it represents different times in my life, and they're all special for different reasons. But I definitely am really excited about the new stuff coming out. I have a song coming out on Wednesday called Angel, and that one's really just beautiful and special. Some of my favorite music that I've ever written is coming out really soon. So
that's so exciting.
In 2 days, yeah, people can hear Angel. Otherwise, Ripe is a super fun kind of just banger.
Very fun song. I love that song. And it's a great music video for people that like music videos. Yeah. And actually that leads me to my next question. What is your summer looking like? What does 2023 look like for you? I mean, like you said, we'll get into the travel stuff, but do you have plans for releases, for tours, for music videos? Is there any, like, what's it look like for you creatively?
I'm currently in Los Angeles for 3 weeks, just like grinding on an album, which is really exciting. So the album won't be coming for a while, but I have singles prepped to steadily release every 4 to 6 weeks for the next, all through the summer and fall. So that's really exciting to finally be ahead of the kind of release schedule a little bit, to actually have stuff ready and not just be scrambling to kind of feed the music machine. So a lot of exciting music. And hopefully some touring. Well, I just signed with a wonderful booking agent in London. So hopefully some touring coming up, and definitely a lot of beautiful visual art, just to kind of start merging the sonic and visual realms. I haven't been doing music videos in a little while, and I'm feeling really ready to kind of jump back in creating the visual side of things. So, but a lot of releases, and, I've been writing a lot for other artists as well. So,
oh, cool.
I have kind of a lot of releases on all fronts, whether it's features or other artists releasing stuff that I've written with them. So that's exciting. There's just a lot of content coming out this year.
Yeah. It seems really fun to me to be able to write for other people also while doing a project, because you can have a different outlet and just sort of put a different hat on for a little bit and kind of get into a different space. Like, it's a fun place to play.
It's so beautiful for me to help be able to tell other people's stories, in a way that hopefully feels authentic to them, but people don't realize how interesting their stories are. Like, I go into a session and they're just telling me about their life, and I'm like listening, but like ferociously typing. I'm like, this is gold. This is all, but people, when we speak, don't necessarily know that what we're saying is super interesting for someone to hear. So
you can mirror that for them. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. So, Paris, France.
Oh, my love.
You and I have obviously had some hangs there, and we both have a deep love for it. And I'd love to hear kind of when you found your love for Paris, and like, when did you discover that you loved it?
I have such, Paris is, I'm obviously not alone in this, but I have such a love for Paris and France. My mother never fails to remind me that I was conceived in France. So I'm like, this is why I'm so connected to France. Like, they came into this earth in France. So, and I have a lot of French relatives and grew up in and out of France and Italy. So there's always kind of been a connection to the language and the culture. So that history is there. But I think when I first got to Paris, it's the first city I've ever been to where I feel like it helped to make me the best version of myself. I was so much more in tune with my intuition, my femininity. I had come from maybe this LA workaholism, super masculine goals, action. And I got to Paris right after that. And it was curiosity and wonder and exploration. And I felt empowered, and I felt in tune with what my insides were communicating to me, even if it was just go down that street, even though it's the opposite way of where you're supposed to be going right now. And it would always lead me to some kind of crazy experience and connection and some wonderment that was really special. And I think that just something really came alive in me in Paris, and something really healed, that I'm still very in awe of her every time I go back.
Is there anything, is it the architecture, the smells, the food, or is it kind of just this amalgamation of all of it together?
I think there's a secret in Paris, and she wants you, and you may never figure out what it is. And that's part of understanding what the secret is. But I think she asks of people to live fully. And I've traveled so much. I've lived nomadically. I grew up all around the world. I have so many favorite places in this world, but there's never been a city. I find cities really disconnect people from who they are. Whenever I hear so many people talking about, when I was in nature, when I'm here, I feel so much more connected to, the land and myself and my body and my breath, whatever that may be. And Paris is the only city I've been to where she just connects me so deeply into myself and my desires and my curiosity. So I feel like all she asks of people is that you live fully, and that you squeeze the zest of life, which is a big ask, and also not a big one, because it's not that difficult to do in Paris.
And I think also showing up authentically, it really feels like that's an important part of the city, is just be yourself and be here. And I love that.
There's a beautiful rawness, grittiness to, at least I find my encounters there, whether it's, when you're in a park, or whether you're in a food experience, everything is just feels so close to the surface and raw, and just kind of no BS, and everything's sexy in Paris,
Everything is sexy in Paris.
Reading a book is sexier than anywhere else in the world. And reading is pretty sexy to me. So that's saying a lot.
I agree.
But it's everything. I mean, the architecture, the nature, the parks, the food, wine tastes different in Paris. I don't really drink that much wine anywhere in the world. You know, the conversations, the language, the music, the placement of where sound is. I speak multiple languages. And so I love sound and placement of language within our throats and voices and everything about it. I'm like, oh God. And she's constantly revealing new, intriguing ways to me. So
yeah, I think you put that beautifully. Have you played Paris? And if so, how was that? And also, second part of that question is, where do you like to see music in Paris? Have you gone to a lot of concerts? And what's your experience with live music there?
I haven't played because over the last 3 years, the months that I've spent there on and off have been very pandemic-y. I would love to play there. I weirdly feel this. I mean, I would love to play, an amazing, big, beautiful venue. But for the first time, I think coming from LA where I was playing all these like full pop shows with I have this one woman show where I play drum pad and synth and guitar and like all these gadgets. And somehow in Paris, it's like back to this raw thing. I was like, I want to go to some kind of piano bar and just like come back to basics. I want to like sit there with a guitar or piano and just serenade people with like voice and piano, which is not something I've done in quite a while. It's been these big productions and these big shows. So I was feeling this kind of itching to just strip it back there. And I have seen some amazing music in Paris is incredible. I mean, everything from jazz nights to crazy, beautiful salsa along the Seine. I've had some friends come through Paris who I saw live. I've seen Fletcher a couple times there and Blue de Tigre. So that's really nice that like anyone in LA that comes through Paris, I get to kind of be their one homie in Paris that comes to the show. It's really nice.
I think seeing live music, and I think you're totally right, because I'm coming out of LA, I was, it's just a lot of concerts, like just going to see a lot of bands and gigs and artists and everything from the hotel cafe, the small, intimate, more singer-songwriter, all the way up to, pop shows. And I have really enjoyed how much kind of outdoors music there is in Paris. Like there's just a brass band playing on the Seine and you just stop and hang out. There's just all this live music, and it's been really fun to be exposed to a lot of different musical styles and cultures. And just by walking down the street, not even because I chose to. And it's fantastic.
I mean, I had one night, I summoned a lover to Paris, my new partner. And the irony of like, there are, so many lovers in Paris that I'm like flying mine in from Ireland. But but even just like walking down across a bridge and there's someone playing saxophone and it's traveling on the wind. And like my senses in Paris are just so heightened. You're like looking out at this extraordinary view with this amazing saxophone and you're next to this person you love and you're like, how is this real life right now? But there's so much, like you said, music on there's so many like walking experiences and you get these little, 5-minute tastes of it. And then you keep walking and then up the road, there's some other different taste of music and a lot of music in parks as well, like big park concerts, which I love. So there's a really wide palette of music in Paris, I found.
If you're enjoying this episode of Music Around Paris, you may also be interested in our sister podcast, Romancing in Paris, where Lily will help you find the most romantic spots here. Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris. And then in terms of just Flavia in Paris, do you have favorite neighborhoods to hang out in? Do you have favorite places to eat? Do you have favorite places to drink? In terms of time spent, is there any sort of tips that you love?
I love to experience. It kind of depends on what someone's mood is. I like a lot of foreign food as well. Two of my favorite just like food flavor dining experiences. One is called Les Frères Lumière, and that's in the 18th, right near Butte-Chaumont Park, which is one of my favorite parks. It's really beautiful. Sorry, not in the 18th, in the 19th. And then Django is one in the 18th. And these are places where everything I've tried, sometimes you have a really good dish on a menu. And then other times everything I've tried there is just so delicious. Favorite wine bars. Augustine is like super high end, amazing wine, the best burrata I've ever had in my life. And it's just the cutest little vibe. That's in the 6th. And Le Barave is like a very cool, hip locals wine bar, always poppin'. So these are all just kind of like, depends what flavor of Paris you want, you know? And then a couple other, like there's a place called, I'm going to probably butcher this name, but Itadakizen. And it is, if you want the smallest restaurant experience, they literally have 5 or 6 seats. It's just like,
wow.
This woman who, I don't know if you've spent any time in Tokyo, but there's those little parts of, there's this like street of bars and restaurants that like.
The Golden Guy.
Yes, exactly. And so she basically, you sit around her, like 5 humans, and she makes you, you know, the 3-4 things that she makes. And they have vegan, it's all vegan. They have vegan sushi and a really interesting take on sushi.
Wow.
Where they're using like eggplant and peppers and stuff instead of tasty, slimy fish. So that's just a really unique experience because it's so intimate. So yeah, those are kind of some of my food spots.
Great. I love that. I love Le Barave. I think that's a good call also just for anyone. If you're a visitor or you kind of want young, kind of cool, hip, music-y culture, like that to me really feels like someplace I would recommend people because I've actually done work meetings with music industry in Paris at that bar.
Oh.
And they're like young, cool, you know, folks. So I definitely think that's a really good shout.
That whole area is really cool. Honestly, if you just only have a few days in Paris and you want like you want to get a taste of the local energy, it's just always pop in there any time of day, good food, really good wine, just kind of super authentic, I don't know, young hip vibes. But there's people of all ages. It's just
agreed.
It's not too cool, you know. Sometimes things can feel too cool.
Yeah, I agree. And I think some of the adults in Paris dress the coolest. It's a town of like, you know, the cool culture actually is, you're right, it's ageless. But I agree. It's a fun, I think the energy is young, I guess. And it's fun. That's like a really fun, cool spot. Okay, well, that's kind of all for now. Thank you for your time.
I want to share with you one of my absolute favorite things to do. That to me, this is a must. It might only be like spring, summer, but this was one of the moments that I most fell in love with Paris. Along the Seine, I mean, they have dancing everywhere, rockabilly, swing in like so many different squares. But along the Seine, it was like a Monday night at midnight, which, you know, in LA would be fairly dead. And there's like 300 people every night of the week who gather along the Seine at this one spot with live instruments, like live percussion and speakers, and they salsa dance every night.
That's amazing.
It's incredible. If there's one thing I can recommend people to have like a unique kind of nowhere else experience, that's for me definitely one of the top beautiful experiences in Paris.
I love that. I'm definitely going to do that. That sounds incredible. And you're totally right. I mean, in the summer, because it stays light there so long, like even coming from LA, where I think of it as a land of sun, moving to Paris, in the summers we'd get home at 2 a.m. It wouldn't feel that late because the sun was out until 11 p.m. So you can sort of slide into the evenings in a completely different way. And midnight has a different sense about it. Like you can still really be awake and alive in that moment. It's great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Have a great day. And I'm looking forward to hearing the music over the whole summer.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for being here today. Hope you enjoyed the chat on Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris. Please check out the other great podcasts on the Paris Underground Radio Network. If you have a second, also, please rate us on Apple Podcasts. It does actually help. And if you want to find me, I'm at Mollie on a Trip on Instagram, and I'd love to chat about music and food and wine and everything Paris. And I'm also super happy to hear suggestions for future guests. Thanks.
Mollie on a Trip, Music Around Paris was produced by Jennifer Garrity for the Paris Underground Radio Podcast Network.